Hi, I'm Jake, and today we're going to go over the new and updated secondary objectives for the Grand Tournament Mission Pack 2021. I felt like the timing couldn't be better for the GT Mission Pack to come out, which from what I'm seeing really sets things up nicely for the upcoming Codex releases. If you're newer to 40k match play, secondary objectives are chosen from 5 categories identified in the mission pack, and may include options from your 9th edition codexes as well as the mission map secondary choices. You are limited in taking 1 from each defined category and can score up to a maximum of 15 points from each, or as otherwise specified under each choice, making up for a potential of 45 points in addition to the 45 maximum points you can score for your primaries. So yes, just as it sounds, secondaries are a crucial aspect to winning and losing 40k match play games. I must say, big ups to GW for seemingly bumping up the timing on things, so hopefully we'll see another wave of codexes available in the very near future. But in the meantime, we already know Sisters, Admech, Thousand Suns, and Grey Knights will be hitting the scene very soon, if not already, depending on when you're watching this video. More notably to the subject matter today, the last FAQ to the mission packs made things pretty rough for some armies. And I kind of felt like it was a knee-jerk reaction at the time of release based on the awkward meta that we were all playing in earlier this year. But regardless, I can't praise these changes enough that we're going to talk about today, considering the power creep we're seeing and saw in early 40k 9th edition. And it's evident that the balance is actually a major focus for GW right now. Being that 40k is an objective-based game, I could argue that even the best players sometimes struggle with choosing secondaries, which can cost them the entire game no matter how awesome of a list they come up with. And of course, the question of which secondaries do I take comes up almost daily amongst players, and you've probably noticed the same if you're part of any sort of Facebook group or Discord server even. The question comes up frequently because it's so complicated. However, it is such a loaded question though, which really does involve what your army list looks like, what your player style is, which mission you're playing, and most importantly, what your opponent's army looks like. When it comes down to it, only you can determine what will be the best for your strategy, but I will try my best today to help point you in the right direction based on my own in-game experience. So let's jump into it and go over the updated secondary objective choices that we'll have access to in the 2021 GT pack. For the first category, which is Battlefield Supremacy, engage on all fronts is unchanged. Still a good choice if you either have the body count or army mobility with a relatively good chance of maxing out points. My best suggestion is always asking yourself if you're able to stay out of the center board and if you have enough stuff that can push into table quarters and pretty much just stay there. Behind enemy lines is a newer one that replaced Line Breaker. Now you score 2 points at the end of your turn if one unit is wholly within your opponent's deployment zone, and 4 points if you have 2 or more units. It's definitely a more viable choice since you get to score those 2 points a turn, which is a lot more reliability than Line Breaker, where you just had to have 2. And then next up is Stranglehold. This one replaced Domination. You score 3 points at the end of your turn if you control 3 or more markers, as well as more objective markers than your opponent. The change is essentially unchanged. Maybe it will apply to some of the newer missions that we're going to see, but I guess we'll see on this one. It's still a great choice if you're confident you can cover the board a lot more than your opponent can. For the next category is No Mercy, No Respite. The first one, No Prisoners, which is what replaced Thin Their Ranks. And this is a much needed change for kill counts to be counted based on wounds instead of models. Definitely applicable to multi-wound troop armies such as Space Marines, Orcs, and pretty much any other elite troop armies. Now, this does mean you can score 3 points for wiping a 10-man squad of Terminators, which you're seeing a lot of play, where in the past it would have only netted you 1 point, so it is a big difference. This is now a viable option going against opponents like all Primaris lists, maybe even Necron infantry lists, and elite armies such as Death Guard, where the latter two actually have access to reviving models, which does count towards your wound tally still. But just be cautious with armies that have access to a lot of healing, as those wounds won't count because it's not based on when the wounds are inflicted, it's when you take a unit down, or model down. Grind Them Down has not been changed either. The secondary choice is definitely a bolder one in general, where you're banking on your army to kill more units per battle round than your enemy can. And in my opinion, completely changes the tone of your game, since after all, your opponent should be, at least should be, trying to deny you from scoring your secondaries as well. And I really enjoy taking this one in certain matchups when running my Death Guard, because I do want my opponent to try and take me down, hoping for a tactical error from their side whilst getting frustrated by my own army's durability. To the last, replaced While We Stand, We Fight. You now identify your units, this is a slight change, but you identify your units after deployment zones are chosen, but of course before the start of the battle. But the notable change here is if your unit is somehow able to split into 2 units and only one of those survives, you score 3 points instead of 5. This can be helpful for certain army units, and it does still exclude, or it does exclude drone units. So big change, a little bit of a change here to Tau. Be cautious when choosing this one, and just like before, you should know whether or not you'll even consider this secondary during your list construction stage. So you're not putting yourself into a situation where a very important unit, a high importance unit, has a massive target on their backs. For the Shadow Operations category, raise the banners high, remaining unchanged. Infantry characters can still perform this action, which is awesome, and can provide some cheeky plays. I personally choose this one pretty frequently and see this one chosen quite frequently due to how reliable it is. Don't forget, you do score that banner point at the end of your command phases, so you can't score at turn 1, so your opponent will have a chance to take that banner from you, assuming they can take the objective. Keep your banner sites protected is all I can say, and also don't forget that you score 1 point for each banner remaining at the end of the battle. Investigate Signal replaced Investigate Sites. The Wholly Within verbiage was added into the 6 inches of the center battlefield coverage. This one still is a bit counterintuitive to engage, or it is counterintuitive to engage, but I can see this one being taken in conjunction with other secondaries like Warp Ritual, where you are trying to park in the middle anyway. The issue of how seemingly easy an opponent can deny your scoring on this one still remains an issue in my opinion. Plus, I'm not a huge fan of secondaries where it forces you to be somewhere that you might not want to be or have to pivot throughout the middle of the game, but hey, who am I to say otherwise? Maybe it works for you. Retrieve Octarius data replaced Deploy Scramblers. You perform this action with infantry units only while you're wholly within a table quarter and more than 6 inches away from another table quarter. The maximum scoring points is 12, but I can see this one being taken by armies such as Sisters and Drukhari, where they have a ton of redundancies in units, as well as MSU. I think this is going to be a really good one for MSU armies that can basically spread out, park, and just survive effectively. It also might not be an entirely bad one for any other higher body count armies, even with like a lot of deep striking capabilities to cover the board effectively. Not sure if I can see myself taking this over banners, but it might come up if I ever needed to be more mobile with my army rather than parking some of my units in the backline, where I typically have about 3 to 4 units parking. Deploy Teleport Homers replaced Teleport Homer. So I like they kept the name similar. But now you can perform this action with infantry and biker units if you're wholly within 12 inches of your opponent's deployment zone for 2 points, and 4 points if you perform the action within the enemy deployment zone. I really think this made the secondary a far more reliable choice, especially if you have mobile screening units where you can park and hold and basically threaten your enemy's front line quickly since you can score within 12 inches. You're definitely gambling over the durability and killing power of your whole army to be able to hold that line. But again, for highly mobile MSU armies, this is probably going to see a lot of play. For the Purge the Enemy category, Assassination, which basically updated Assassinate and replaced Cut Off the Head, thank God, because Cut Off the Head was one of the least viable secondaries available in my opinion. Assassinate being updated to simply give you a bonus of 1 point for killing a warlord just made it that much more sensible. For Titan Hunter, a much needed change to this one. Since I do feel Knights will be seeing a lot more play in 9th edition due to some of their innate rules changes like not being able to be tar pitted like in the past edition. But now you can score 4 points for taking down 1 Titanic model, 9 points for taking down 2, and max out at 15 points if you take 3 or more down. Nice balance to say the least. Just be sure that at the end of the day, you can take a Titan down. Bring it down. Updated again. The last FAQ change turned this frequently seen secondary and an awesome secondary to almost a non-existent one. It's really great timing though, since we're seeing new army codexes hit the table, like Drukhari specifically, In the Raider boats, as an example, having 10 wounds will now grant you 2 points for popping those rather than just the 1, and you still get the 3 points for each monster or vehicle with the wounds characteristics of 20 or more. I could see this being a solid choice against the new AdMech as well, depending on their buffs. We'll see on this one. Where we might see more of like a night mixture in vehicles, along with their probably what's going to be horde, troops. For the Warpcraft category, Psychics. All right, Abhor the Witch. It's been updated. You score 3 points for each Psyker character destroyed, down from 5, but now you also get 2 points for any other Psyker units that you take down. With Grey Knights and Thousand Suns being updated soon, this is a nice change to see, and I think that's going to kind of pave the way to give us a heads up on what to expect. However, you will still only be able to take this one if you don't run any Psykers in your list. So it's still very situational, mainly based on the army you play. Batau, Drukhari, some certain Space Marine builds, and of course Necrons might be seeing some benefit in taking this as a choice. Warp Ritual replaced Psychic Ritual. Psychers, rejoice. Because this one's actually viable now. It's not all or nothing like it was. It was such a tough pill to swallow, considering it shuts down the entire casting phase of that unit that you're performing this action with. But not to mention, it pretty much was only useful to armies with a whole lot of Psychers, or those armies that had a lot of cast or plus to cast bonuses to make sure that you get that reliability out of it. It's just far more improved, but now you can only max out 12 points. But it is arguably better than a 0 or 15 point swing. That's obvious. Still be cautious though, since it does involve you being within 6 inches of the center of the board, which can be a compromising position. For Pierce the Veil, this one was also unchanged. I still don't like it, but might be seeing some play for like the new heavier Psyker armies that we were talking about. Why don't I like it? Because there aren't that many armies that can nudge themselves out, nudge themselves within 6 inches of your deployment field edge and still still maintain long enough to be there 2 to 4 times the score. And then lastly, we have Psychic Interrogation. This one replaced Mental Interrogation. It's a slight change, but a notable one, where the range that you can perform this action is up to 24 inches rather than 18 inches. Again, a really nice balance here from GW, knowing that heavy casting armies usually want to be staying a little bit further away. Overall, some nice changes here that we can see. And it should be obvious that how they recognized a lot of the objectives were not being taken. Like some of the ones that saw a lot of play just were more times than not completely ignored. I found a lot of players struggled with finding a viable third secondary selection come game time, which didn't completely counteract other choices. It's always nice to see when you have multiple options to choose from, which means that balance does in fact exist. Let's see what happens with the introduction of new army codexes, as well as with the chapter approved changes, of course, for 2021, which will include points changes. Well, that's it for today, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in, and if you found this video to be helpful or informative by any measure and would like to see more content like this, please stay subscribed and join in on the conversation in the comments below. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.